Well, it arrived today. I got the bigger cutter, so I'm going to take the one that I was using off and use it with this bearing, and that should give me the larger channel, so that herringbone will fit. It'll be about 20 thousandths, no, about 10 thousandths larger. Okay, test cut time. Alright, that looks pretty good. Hey, what do you know? No surprises again, and looks good. This is the front here. The binding fits real well. If I can hold it here. See, binding fits good, and the purfling is in there good. And I'll just have to, there's just a little bit of fuzzies on here. I'll just real lightly sand out, like right down on the end grain here. But I think we got it, and we'll be able to bind the top. I'll do that this weekend. It's a work night tonight, but I wanted to get the, I was excited to get that router bit, and just wanted to get the ledge cut tonight. Alright, I was just playing around with this a little bit here tonight, and everything fits good. The thing is, the herringbone is, well, they're both wood bindings, but it's pretty stiff, and you really gotta push to make sure that it's right tight against the top. And if I put the binding on here, there are a few areas where there's a little space between the binding and the purfling. You'll never see it when it's glued, but it's not enough that I can get enough pressure with the tape to push the purfling, or this herringbone purfling, in. So I'm going to end up gluing this, I think, on first, and just make sure I've got that tight all the way around the top here. So what I'm going to do is just give this a wash coat of shellac on top, so when I put that binding tape on, there's less chance of tearing out the spruce. So I've got some pretty dilute shellac here. I'm just going to put a quick coat on the top here. That should do it. Alright, I'm going to put this herringbone binding on tonight, and I'll try and be real neat with the glue. So tomorrow we don't have to clean up the binding channel here, hopefully an awful lot. But again, I'm doing this so that I can tape this and make sure I get this purfling close to the top. So I'm just marking this like we did the other one, except here I can be a little looser up front because the neck's going to be here, and it doesn't matter if there's a gap between these two pieces of herringbone. So I'll just cut that where I marked it here. Alright, what I'm going to do to start, I'm going to start in the back here with the joint is, and make sure it's nice and tight, and that the purfling comes together nice back here, and we have a good joint here. Alright, to get all the herringbone done on the top here, and we'll let this dry before I put the binding on. This is the herringbone purfling that's on the top. Alright, the glue's dry on the herringbone, so I'm just going to take off all the tape and see how everything looks here. Well, there we go with all the tape off. And looks pretty nice with the herringbone binding. Actually, purfling. Just feeling around the edge, I can feel there's a little bit of glue here that I've got to clean up. So I'll just go around the channel. Got a sanding stick. Maybe I'll use a scraper just to make sure this channel is nice and clean. Get that glue out of there before we put the binding on. So that'll be the next step. I'll just kind of run around here with the stick like this and the scraper, and just get this cleaned up. Alright, I've got the channel cleaned up pretty good for the binding, and the binding fits really well. And the height of it, this white part, is just about flush with the herringbone. But what's happened is the herringbone's a little bit below the spruce here. Just like really, you can hardly feel it. So I'm going to, this white part in the binding is so thin I want to get the top just about even with the herringbone before I do any sanding, because I don't want to take the white part off the binding. So basically I'm just going to kind of scrape the top along the edges here until I come down close to the same height as the herringbone. Since I scraped the top to bring the herringbone down about the same level as the top, it took off that shellac, and since we'll be taping again to put the binding on, I'm going to put another wash coat of shellac on just to help keep the spruce from you know, us pulling up the grain on the spruce. And I just had an idea. On the back where we've got the joint, I want the joint to look real good. That's where the 45s come together. I used super glue. I used 20 super glue and just did the back joint because I could get it real tight, look at it, set it up, put a little accelerator on there, and I taped it tight. So we'll let that dry, and tomorrow I'll do the binding with the tight bond. But I think it's just an easier way to make sure that you get a really good joint, hopefully, with using the super glue, because it allows you to do just this one spot. Alright, we're ready to start wrapping up the binding. This is the last part on the top here. As I say, I glued this with super glue in the back here to get the joints close and to match up, and now I'm going to use tight bond the rest of the way and do both sides of the binding here. So we'll start in the back, and I'll try and make sure the glue gets all the way up to about where the super glue was back here. Well, that completes the binding process. We got both the back and the top all done. I just got to let it dry now. Get the purfling and the binding on. So we'll let this glue dry, and we'll take it off and see how everything looks, and then we've got to give it a final sanding. Okay, the glue's all dry, and I'm just doing the opposite, just taking off the tape here. And as I was saying before, you got to be careful because the spruce is soft, and we actually did have a little bit of tear out right down here. It's very, very thin. I think I'm going to give this a little bit of a sanding. It should come off. This is just kind of fuzzy. But what happened here is I had two pieces of tape at one time, and you got to tear it off just one piece at a time because it's just too much for the wood. Nice few pieces here. Alright, that's it. Body's got the binding on it. It's done. I mean, it's still got to be sanded, but got all the binding on here. Here you go. That's what it looks like. The herringbone on here. And right there is where I had that little bit of run out in the grain. I think what I'll do is I'll probably scrape that before I sand it. But see, it's very thin. It's like paper thin. Okay, that little part that pulled up, I'm just scraping out here. And I think that'll be fine until we sand it. I was just looking at the purfling and the binding, and it's very good. It's like just in about the same plane as the top. And I wanted to make sure that we kind of did that with especially the white outer binding here, because it's got the white on top. And I didn't want to sand that too much because that white there is fairly thin. You can see here it's fairly thin. I didn't want to sand through that. So I think the next step, what we'll do is just give the top a light sanding with some, probably use like 125 grit of it, Abernet, maybe even 220. And then just be real careful and do the purfling and the binding here along the edge. Okay, I'm ready to start sanding the top. I'm going to start with some 120 grit and just hit the spruce. I'm going to try and not hit the binding too much here. Okay, looks pretty good. You can see right up here the binding was a little high, hit the white. The rest of it I didn't hit very much. And now what I'll use is a palm sander. It's going to give me better control, and I only got 220 grit on that. And now I'll kind of concentrate on the outside edges. Like right here, there's still glue on. I didn't even hit that part. And I'll just be careful up here because we already got it. I'll just make a real light pass up here. Alright, I was hoping to conclude this video with having the guitar completely scraped and sanded and the box pretty much done. But it's a lot of work. I already probably got about 2 hours of just scraping on this thing. Because what I'm doing is bringing the sides. This I've done here quite a bit. I'm bringing the sides down because the binding was a little bit lower than the sides. Now here it's perfect. You know, I was just going to do the wood first and not touch the binding, but I got anxious. I just wanted to see how it looked once we had it all flushed, and it looks pretty good. The other side I haven't even touched yet. This side you can still see a lot of glue. See a lot of glue here. It's got to be taken off. And the glue is kind of on the sides from, you know, it got between the tape when I pulled the tape down. So really this is a lot of work still. I gotta imagine I got quite a few hours of scraping and just detail work. I've got 3 different size scrapers here, and I've been practicing how to sharpen them. Get this little burnishing tool that I got, and it seems to work pretty good. I'm starting to get the hang of it, trying to get the burr on there. But I've got them where they're taking a pretty they're getting more curls than they are sawdust, so they seem to be pretty good. So I gotta imagine there's going to be quite a few nights down here just doing nothing but scraping. So it could be another week or 2 before I get the next video up.